Hi, thank you for sticking around. This is also being recorded, so hi if you're watching online. But yes, we had a very long service where we celebrated a bunch of things. And so if you're online or you're here, if you're here, you already heard me say a lot of it, but I want to repeat a little bit of it. If you're online, I hope you check out the sermon a little bit. But part of the goal of the meeting is to celebrate some things. So let me go back and make sure I give you a little bit of history. So our church used to operate around the calendar year. What I mean by that is the finances operated on a January 1st kind of basis, followed the calendar year. Also, our transition from old elders to new elders and old deacons to new deacons, our transition of new members of consistory, that also happened on January 1st. And there used to be a congregational meeting, usually in late November, early December, that time period, in which elders and deacons were selected, budgets were proposed or approved or whatever that happened to be, and some things like that. We changed it because that tends to be such a busy time of year, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and the whole bit, and it just didn't seem to fit with, it was especially no fun as a staff member to do some of the end of year stuff when we're trying to prepare for Christmas week and stuff like that. So we felt like it would fit better to have the transitions take place. Welcome, Elizabeth. Sorry, she gets special welcome all the time. You don't matter, though. So we switched it up, and when we switched it up, we decided we wouldn't have that traditional congregational meeting in November anymore. We would kind of have a kickoff, and we would have a celebration. So kick off that first week after Labor Day, and we've done different things with that. Sometimes having special food that day or like a potluck, sometimes having a ministry fair kind of thing and having some different things that are on display. And we've done different things with the celebration. This year, like we said, we're spreading out the celebration over all summer long. So we're going to have those 2 to 3 minute videos during the collection of the offering as a way of expressing gratitude to God, which is part of what our offering is too. Our offering is an act of gratitude toward God. And it's an act of, here, you're supporting the ministries that take place. So it just made sense to have those videos take place during the offering over the summer. So there's going to be a series of those videos that really highlight things, celebrate things, and are an offering of gratitude in and of themselves. So I hope you can appreciate that all summer long. And like I said, they're going to appear in a YouTube playlist so that you could just watch through them if you miss a Sunday, or if you want to look back at the end of the summer and just think good thoughts about what your church is up to and all that God is doing. Say, yes, I love that idea, Drew. Yes. Appreciate the support. So anyway, that's part of the reason why we're having a meeting even now, though, is to celebrate, look back, also look at the finances for next year. So that's why you got that. We'll talk about that in just a moment, so you don't need to look at those just yet. Wow. So I do want to say, in the congregational meeting, let me see if I can, see here, ministry year 2025. So first of all, looking at the ministry year 2025-26, I want to say we've had different ministry year themes. So if you've been around the last couple years, one of our themes was story. And we had that big book up here for a long time, and we thought about how story helps us frame what the Bible is, but about our own personal stories, all that sort of thing. Another time our theme for the year was about kingdom. And so coming off of the painting of the mural over the summer, which is all about kingdom stuff. The one side is Isaiah's picture of the kingdom coming to fruition. The other side is a parable of the kingdom, and it's a parable of the mustard seed, right? So kingdom theme. And we talked about what it means to live into the kingdom and life in the kingdom for a whole year. So that was a ministry year theme. Another ministry year theme was about rooted, growing, and sharing. And this whole idea, and there was a lot of plant life metaphors, and we had the growing plants in the windows and stuff like that. I noticed that Trisha has one of those over at Still Shores right now, if you see in the window. If you're parked over on the far side of the building, you can see them. Anyway, So, all that to say, our ministry year theme for this year was about being centered in Christ. So, let me go back to what I wrote way back in September. In both our church life and our personal lives, we are busy, overcommitted, and scattered or scatterbrained. And not all of you might appreciate that, but a lot of people do appreciate that, including a lot of people who aren't here because they're busy and overcommitted doing other things. You see this? Okay. We keep hearing the Spirit chastise us with words like simplify, scale back, focus. With that in mind, our ministry year theme will be center, as in centering in God. In other words, the goal is to make sure God is in the central position and to refocus our personal lives and our church life so that we're focused on what is most important. That being the case, we're trying to be mindful of how to recenter each week. So we tried to have times in the service where we recentered each week. We sang those songs, Jesus be the center and Jesus at the center. So we just tried to do some centering kind of things. I even recommended the Hallow app to some people, and a lot of people latched onto that. And the good thing is the Gospel of John helps us just focus on Jesus. Not a whole lot of anything but Jesus. John has just given us Jesus over and over and over again. So, all that to say that I think, looking back at it, some of the centering stuff was focused on, and it may or may not have worked in your life. It helped in my life to center on Jesus. The simplifying part did not happen. It didn't happen for a lot of us. If you talk to a lot of people in my generation, it didn't happen. And if you heard what I presented during the sermon, the reason it went so long is because I was talking about how many things are happening. Not very simplified, but a lot of good stuff. And so the centering stuff worked a little bit. Some of the simplifying did not. We still have to think about that a little bit. But with the goal of reminding us of where we were, I just want to remind us of some of these things. You just heard me talk about them, so I'm not going to talk at length about them, but I just love all the contributions people make to Sunday worship, to Sunday morning experience on the whole, hospitality, and beginning to take on the challenge of welcoming new people more and more and more. I think that's one of the ongoing challenges is how do we create space in our hearts and in our homes and in our small groups and other places for other people to get involved. That's ongoing work that needs to be done, and some of the newer people in our midst would tell you that. Like, how do I really get involved in X or Y? How do I really get involved in a group and all that? And so let us continue to take on that hospitality and try to reflect the love of God to other people. I think that's ways we can continue to grow and be who God has called us to be. And I'm thankful for all the people who already work in that way. So, and thankful for the prayer team members who are up front. Every Sunday there's a pair of prayer team members if you ever need prayer for something. So just keep that in mind. They would be overjoyed to have the opportunity to pray with you about whatever's going on. So there's that, and then yes, all sorts of things worth celebrating in children's ministry and youth ministry and small groups. I've had the privilege of being able to walk beside Kurt in the youth ministry stuff and helped out like the last 4 youth groups and led the middle schoolers. What an awesome privilege. We have a great group of kids that are involved in our church, and what a great privilege to be able to invest in the next generation and help them come to know and love and follow Jesus and be there to answer some of their questions and just have fun. And so we're always looking for more leaders who want to be a part of that. So if you want to invest in the next generation, you got a big old heart, come. Oh, sorry. And children's ministries. Very important. We're grateful for those that have stepped up this year, and as always, there's room for other people to step up and help to be anything from storytellers to leaders of Sunday school curriculum. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's curriculum that's provided that you can follow along. So the biggest thing we need is a passion and a heart for the next generation to know and follow Jesus. That's really huge. So Yes, and we've got all sorts of different groups happening, and Kingdom Journey, which I promoted during the service itself, but again, kingdomjourney.substack.com. If you just type that into your browser, it'll take you to lots of people's stories, not just Wayne and Marcy's, not just Ashley Garris, but there's stuff from Dave Anderson and Chris and Andrea Camp. There's stuff from Drew, stuff from me, stuff from Andrea, stuff from all sorts of people. Thankful for the leadership and the new people, Sharon and Linda. They're like, yeah, I'll be on the slate. Who knows if God will pick me? They've been picked. And thankfully, you know, some of the people who were asked who did not say yes, some of it is a matter of busyness and making sure there's enough space. But all the people that we asked are very involved in the church and very involved in different ways. And so, and feeling like God's already got me on this path. I don't need another thing for God to have me on. I don't feel called for God to have another thing for me to be on. So I'm not discouraged by people not saying yes who are already like super involved. So that's good. Also, hey, I highlighted a bunch of this during the service too. Amazing caring ministries and people feeling deeply loved in a lot of circumstances, anything from birth to death. And so good work on all of that. And may we continue to grow in our capacity to meet people in their needs and meet people where they're at. We will see about the community stuff. I want to just say, relative to the community stuff, we'll come back to it a little bit, but as I mentioned a few weeks ago in kind of a personnel update, that Andrea is the pastor of care, community, and kids, and has never been able to get to all three at once. It's like 2 out of the 3, because the 3 would require they're like 3 part-time jobs that make a job and a half. So only getting to 2 of the 3. And so one of the things that's happening is that we're pursuing somebody to help with the next generation, but at the same time, we haven't filled that position yet, and Andrea is releasing some of the things that she's in charge of, and so some of the things that are, and asking other people to step up so that she just has a full-time job instead of a 1.5-time job. And so it's great, Maggie stepped up to help run VBS. If we want to see some of these other things happen next year, we may need other people to say, hey, I would love to run that one. I'd love to make sure the things happen relative to whatever, trunk or treat, things like that. And if it doesn't happen, we might not have some of those events. And that's okay. Might be one of the ways we simplify. But if you love doing it, and some of our younger families who aren't even present here who love doing it, one of them might be willing to be in charge of, say, a trunk or treat or something like that. But man, I can't say enough about the tubing event this past year, because it was literally 0 degrees. And we had a ton of people come out and have fun and interact with each other. It was such a great atmosphere, and some people invited their friends and were a part of it, and so it was just a great time, right? It was a great time. Woohoo! But it was cold, but nobody got frostbitten, and the champion this year was who? Nancy Velick? She was the champion. Because the year before, Jay Youngflesh and Gail Kennedy went tubing, which is to be commended. Not to say anything ageism, not to be ageistic, is that a word? But this year was Nancy Velick. She went out there twice, was just going down the hill. The video was of Tayo going down the hill. Anyway, we had a good time with that. Other things, as I mentioned and try to bring attention to, great stuff happening with the garden, with the meals, with Safe Harbor, with the food drive, where we help contribute some food to a local food pantry. Great things happening in missions. What a privilege to go with Jack and Beth and Rick Simons and Andrea and Claire and go over to Nepal, and then to be involved with the children's homes and single mom and disaster response services. So just all good stuff that we're partnering with all those people, and then partnering with all these campus partners. Can't underestimate, especially in a moment we're going to look at the finances, can't underestimate the way in which we kind of underwrite, not on a kinda, we underwrite some of the ministry that happens through these groups. And so that's one of the things that you support is ministries that aren't directly tied to us, but are indirectly tied to us. So that's pretty awesome. And there's all sorts of things happening from a facility standpoint, and I don't do a great job of summarizing all that stuff. But not only did we paint in here, but we did some insulation that prevented some freezing in the roof. So it's a little thing, but it's a big thing. We try to set aside $30,000 every year for maintenance of the buildings. And sometimes we have to pour a ton of that into something like an insulation project. We had to redo the foundation of the Anderson Roadhouse, so that required a huge chunk of money because there was water seeping in the basement. We had to redo some pipe work in there, and Mike Boudet helped Jonathan redo the pipe work in there. Chris Lewis has been helping us with a bunch of stuff that's exterior stucco work. I could name other people. So thank you for everybody who contributes to all the facility stuff, but there's been a lot going on, and we are still evaluating what it looks like to continue to upgrade this space in terms of flooring and seats and all that. So not much to report on that just yet, except that it's being researched by the facilities team. So that was a quick run through, not nearly as passionate and celebratory. You didn't even clap once, except for maybe Elizabeth when she came in. Doesn't count. It's like when you prompt the kid to say thank you. Doesn't count. Anyway, no, totally worth celebrating, so I hope you enjoyed the service and that we went long and celebrated all that stuff. It's worth celebrating. There's so much good ministry happening and continued growth toward maturity and love. So I really meant what I said during the service, and it's fun just to take a step back and look at everything, because you might be involved in one or two of these things, but not realize all the rest of those things are happening, right? And so it's really cool to see everything that's happening a little bit, kind of see it. Okay, so next year, yes, like I said, conscious of trying to make sure we have alignment. We're not just like doing everything we could possibly do, but how do these things align and how do we come together on some of those things? That's one of the things we're thinking about for next year. And this day is not totally designed to look ahead to next year, so this is just going to be some brief comments. But one of the things looking forward to next year is our finances. In our particular polity, governmental policy kind of thing, the consistory is in charge of creating the budget. It does not require congregational approval, but it would be insulting to all of you to not bring the finances forward and be able to give you the opportunity to ask questions. And so that's why it's all in front of you, and we want to be transparent about that stuff. And Drew and Chris are now going to come up, present what there is to be presented, and answer all of your wonderful questions. So Drew Peterson, welcome Drew Peterson and Treasurer Chris Camp. Woo woo!
If you need a handout, just raise your hand and we'll make sure you get one. Yours has a big, well, you probably got the wrong one then. All right, yeah, so what you see on your paper in front of you, hopefully that's pretty explanatory, self-explanatory. We just wanted to give you another picture of the current reality of where we're at with our finances. Granted, we have the rest of the month to work towards finishing that, as the new budget year doesn't start until the first of next month. And so that's just giving you a current reality of the picture, because there is something spectacular to praise God for in that. That much funds came in, and that we were able to do all of the different ministries that Drew had talked about as a result of that. And so that is a big deal. And so we are truly grateful. There we go. Thank you, Drew. And then, so on the next couple pages is where we want to just give you a snapshot, hopefully a very clear snapshot of where we want to go and what that might look like. And so Chris is going to help walk us through that, him being far more financially educated and experienced than I. So yeah, Chris, what would you like to share with us on the following pages there?
Well, on the first page, before we talk about the next fiscal year, there's a little table that shows where we expect to end up with this year that we're in currently, ending June 30. The actual numbers that we have are still through April 30th. The month of May is being closed this upcoming week. So what we took was April actual, and then we just extrapolated 2 months based on the trends that we've had with both income and expenses. So if everything comes to average, we will end up this year with a $26,000 deficit. It's not so bad considering a $1 million income and expenses. But one of the other points is the budget for the year was 1.14 million, and so we didn't spend what we anticipated, and our offering income also was anticipated, but we'll end up with a small deficit for the year. And if you want to look at the pie chart, is the same information that's in the table, just in a colorful way to picture so you can see which segments are the largest. But in I think it might be the last page of your handout, the budget amount. So for next year, after quite a bit of deliberation by deacons and elders and the consistency, we're budgeting expenses of 1.16 million, and we're budgeting income of a lower amount, and it's 1.1 million. And we are budgeting then a deficit of 74,000 for the next year. That's probably a little unusual. You're hearing a budgeted deficit. Usually budgets are net to zero when they're made, but part of the deliberation was, I think, a very faithful discernment to be able to hire and employ this next-gen pastor, as well as to be able to utilize more of Pastor Andrea's time in the care ministry. Two very significant priorities of the consistory. And so if that happens, we'll have another small deficit for the year that can be covered by assets. The consistory believes that this is a temporary financial trend. The hope is through this investment, growing our community, giving will increase and eventually cover our costs. So the expenses are about 10% growth over prior actual, and what we're budgeting for income is only 5% growth over last year, and that's what gives us the 74,000 deficit. And I mentioned that the deficits can be covered by our investments. So the bottom of that page shows our cash and investments for our church. We have cash of 200,000, restricted money market funds of 217,000. Those are past gifts that were restricted for youth and expanding faith, and over time they're spent each year for those purposes. And then we have unrestricted money market and CDs of 1.1 million, and that can be used for church, whatever purposes the church puts forth. Consistory felt that next-gen pastor and then growing our care ministry is appropriate deployment of those funds. And also, Pastor Poppleton mentioned that the Facilities Committee is working on a list of projects, getting budgeted quotes. The deacons will be meeting this month, and one of the things we'll be determining is how much of that 1.1 million of investments, which is substantially some gifts that were given a couple years ago, how much we'll use for those projects. And so you'll see a lot of activities that'll be going on in our church over the next couple years.
Can I say something real quick? Mm-hmm. So another way to look at this and hear what's being said is, even though there's the projected deficit, with all those additional funds that we have in the reserves, you might see new carpet or something like that, and you're like, well, how is that happening if we're running a deficit? Well, it's because we're utilizing a lot of those reserves that we have for some upgrades, some improvements that haven't been done, right? And so original carpet, original chairs. Well, those chairs have a lot of gross things in them that might be nice to move away from, right? Or to get cleaned or something, right? And so these are important things that we feel like it's important to do for all of you, all of us, anybody who walks in through our doors, is to be able to have a nice, safe, clean place to be, to worship from. And so as you hear that, here what we're saying is that yes, there's an anticipated deficit that we can cover, and we want to do some improvements with a good portion of those funds as well. And so sometimes it can feel like if you were doing your home budget like that, it's not going to work real well. But in this sense, in the way that the church budget can work, that seems like an appropriate way in which the deacons could utilize the funds moving forward, with the full discussion with consistory.
And just one more point about the budget, and Drew, I got a kick out of your eternal fire insurance. That's a new term that we'll have. But I think that our church, one of the comments that I wanted to make is when I became a deacon and treasurer, one of the things that really became live to me is how much this church spends outwardly through missions, through benevolence. And I had no idea until I started to see the numbers, but I think we build a lot of eternal fire insurance in our church. But in the budget, just through missions, benevolence, and the community meals and garden, and that's not all of it. There's much more that you just can't quantify, but that's 13% of our revenue that we're really pushing outside of the walls of this church. And then it was also mentioned that we have some campus partners. We provide space for quite a few organizations. We've never quantified the value of that, but it's pretty significant. And so our church does very good at helping others, helping our community and globally. So that was what I had, Drew.
Yeah, so with questions, you can hang on to your mic and I'll pass the mic around. Does anyone have questions? Help us clarify some of what was shared. Do you want to use the mic? All right, project that.
How much is that FTE for the next gen pastor? And is that somebody that you're looking for as a
Full-time staff. For the next generation pastor, the cost is what you're asking. What is the cost of that, or
And credentials.
and credentials? It would be full time, so that's going to assume the portion like the children's ministry, and then because Kurt's on the interim role, that person would then assume the youth and be able to care for the 0 to 18-year-olds.
Yeah, so we're dreaming up a role that will cover the next generation, truly. There's a lot of other churches that are hiring for that kind of position, and in a lot of ways it's unrealistic to think that the same person that could connect with high schoolers can connect with a 3-year-old. But we're imagining this person having some skills to sort of empower people in one of those groups and be with another one of those groups. So if they're with the middle schoolers and high schoolers, they're empowering the children's ministry. But we want somebody that's really taking it on full time and thinking about it all the time. Beth? Sorry. Oh, and we're open to what the qualifications could be. So if we list it as, low qualifications, low income, we might not get the kind of person we want. And so it might be somebody who has greater qualifications and requires a little bit more income, and then we're going to have to wrestle with can we really pay that person and take that on. And in the meantime, we want to continue to doing what we're doing this spring, whereas our attendance has been really good all through these last 2 months, and we've got newer people coming in through the doors, and we need to make sure they stick, and we're counting on some of that stretch budget kind of pays for itself. That's kind of I think that when I start talking this way, it sounds a little crude in terms of church world, but part of the reason there was even a stretch budget with Tayo was that, hey, we knew that if we had a worship leader who was leading worship well, other people were going to come in and not leave. They were going to stick around and stay. And so if we needed a few extra bucks to pay for what Tayo was at, hey, there's some new people in our midst paying for that. So we're imagining some of that same kind of scenario and dreaming that up. Beth? 242.
So I noticed that in the total budget for 26-27, it's just around 14,000 more than last year. And so I'm wondering, how do you add somebody full-time and only net out 14,000 more? Something had to be cut, and I'm wondering what was cut.
In the personnel budget,
Just the total.
Overall, it says it's 14,393 more than last year.
so that's versus the prior year budget, but we're on target to only spend 92% of last year's budget. So it's actually a 10% increase over what we think we'll actually spend for the past year.
But yes, one of the things that's budgeted in there is a decrease in hours to Andrea. So if Andrea right now had 3 part-time jobs and would go back to doing about 1.5 of those jobs, if those 3 part-time jobs took 60 hours, 1.5 of them would take 30. That's what's currently budgeted. So if we hire that person, and she would eventually make her way out of children's ministries, which would not happen overnight. There would be a transition with both Kurt and her in terms of this other person taking over those responsibilities. So that's part of it. There's a little bit less budgeted in there. Now, when it comes to Andrea's benefits as a full-time employee of the church, her insurance is a great deal to the church because it's mine. So you're already paying our family's insurance. So she's a good deal that way. So it doesn't change anything from that standpoint, but it would change some of the benefits in terms of retirement and things like that. So there's a little bit cut in that realm. And as you know, there's a little bit cut in missions.
Well, I would just like to say, and I'll stick my nose probably where it doesn't belong,
Good.
which I've done often in the past.
It's what we appreciate about you.
Andrea is doing 1.5 times what she was called to do, and I personally don't feel that it's equitable to cut her salary when she's now going to be able to do 2 jobs well full-time.
Other questions about finances, budget? Linda Nelson over here. Is it still on?
The administration budget, so this does not include personnel. Can you just give me an idea of what, is this copy paper and things like that, or what's in that?
$138,000 in paper.
Yes, right. The administration budget covers a whole variety of pieces of the church, so subscriptions, certainly paper, any sort of office supplies. We rent a printer because they're so expensive to buy outright, and so there's the monthly cost for things like that. If we need new budgets or new computers, that's where that would be budgeted from. A large host of things just come directly out of the administration budget like that. And so anything that's not like utilities are moved over to facilities and things like that. It covers a lot of things. Yep, correct.
And am I correct in saying that our bookkeeper and payroll is it through that line item too?
Yes. Our bookkeeper and payroll costs come through that, which make up a large portion of that, because that is essentially hiring someone off site to handle those pieces.
What do they give to the RCA? Is that out of that?
Yeah, so the question was, what do we give to the RCA, and is that out of that line item? I think that's in there too.
I think it is in there. It's a percentage of revenue. Is it 1%?
No.
No, it works its way up to 3. I think we're in the
3%.
process of moving up to 3% of total revenue is what gets owed to the denomination.
Yeah, so from the denominational standpoint, it used to be you paid per member, and then they went to a change of paying your percent of your budget, which is a little bit more fair, which makes sense. But everybody is kind of grandfathered into the system, so your old payment wouldn't be any more than 10% of your last payment. So we should be paying something like $28,000 or $29,000 to the denomination, but we currently only pay 18 or 19 because we're only being ratcheted up 10%. We were the one of the ones who benefited from having per member assessments because per member, per capita wealth in our congregation is much higher than other congregations, if that makes sense. It's at the top line item.
The administration.
Yep, in that administration is bookkeeper, it's payroll, and
The RCA tax.
the RCA stuff, and you'd be surprised at the number of subscriptions that we have because we have a subscription to that like database service that takes care of our directory, but that's that same group that helps us organize our worship services. So they have like multiple things, but yeah, there's other subscriptions but some of the music stuff is actually in Tayo's budget, which is worth mentioning. The keyboard that we have is not fully functional, so $6,000 in Tayo's budget is for a new keyboard. So if you're a person who just says, I would love to give to something fun above and beyond my tithe, we would love to take $6,000 out of the budget, and you could support by buying a new keyboard. Something to think about, for real. Question. Who has a question? Suzanne?
Does the old keyboard have any value?
Does it have any value, the old keyboard? I mean, you've used it. Oh, sorry. Yeah, he's using his keyboard, usually, his own personal one. But does the old one that's broken a little bit? It still has some value.
Just don't use the black keys. Or the white. I can't remember which one.
That sounded really racist, man.
I didn't.
Beth has more questions.
No, you need a mic.
Thanks, Jack.
So if I did my math correctly, if we all gave 1 to 5% more than we're currently tithing, we could easily make the budget. So that doesn't seem like a big heartache.
No. That seems like pretty good math. And yeah, if your income went up, yeah, hopefully your tithe goes up too.
All those in favor?
Yeah, you're on a fixed income. I did want to say from a staff standpoint, just some appreciation for the fact that our church does pay pretty well, and especially in terms of benefits. There's lots of churches that do not do a good job of paying well, and it's based on what I was preaching about today, that people are called to certain things, and the whole reason there's a paid professional class of Christian is only to relieve us from having to pursue work elsewhere when we're hopefully supporting the church and equipping the ministry kind of thing. And yet what it constitutes as a living wage differs among churches, and this church does a really good job. So appreciate the finances and benefits. Yeah, Bob. Well, people can't hear it online, so we'll still repeat it, but go ahead.
I'm rather new to the RCA. Some of the monies we contribute there go to missions on the denominational budget?
Yes, so he's asking if some of the money that we contribute to the RCA goes to missions. Yes, the way in a big chunk of the money that goes to the RCA goes to the big meeting that happens every year. So we don't always get something out of that. But last year I attended that meeting, so we got all our money out of it because I went to Arizona for 6 days and got to swim in a pool and blah, blah, blah. Okay. So all your monies, we got it back out. But nobody from our church is going to General Synod this year, so we're kind of supporting the big meeting without, but that's like half the RCA's budget. But another big chunk of it goes toward our classes. And our classis is highly functional. We've got a great executive minister, so some of it supports him, and then some of it supports other staff within the RCA. Now, there's 6 or 7 staff that are part of RCA Global Mission, so you can consider our funds going to fund those staff members that are doing good work. The official sponsoring of RCA missionaries like Yakuv happens through our missions budget. But yes, some of the funds that go to the denomination support the staff of the denomination, which includes, so that's one of the things that would change if we ever left the RCA but still wanted to support people like Yakuv. We could still support Yakuv individually, but we'd no longer be supporting the staff people that kind of supervise Yakuv and help Yakuv. Does that make sense? Because we'd no longer be paying into that RCA fund. Good question, Bob. Sally?
So, in speaking about whether you're going to stay with the RCA or not, I'm just wondering where you are in this process.
Yeah.
When the final decision will be made, and will that be a vote or not?
Yeah. Dave Taylor, feel free to speak up. Dave's back there, chair of the elders. Yeah, repeat the question. Sorry. Yes, Sally said, speaking of the denomination, where are we at with that decision-making process? We definitely had some things slow down in the winter around that, but have re-sped it up. And so here's what I would say. If you're a member of the Great Consistory, we are inviting you to a meeting this upcoming week. We're going to give the invitation. The meeting is not this upcoming week. The invitation's coming out. To meet on the last Friday of June. What is that? June the 26th in the evening. Because we want to have a follow-up conversation, a conversation we had in November with the Great Consistory. And then, yes, come to some sort of final conclusion on, hey, we're staying in the RCA for now or we're leaving. I mean, those are kind of the two options, and right now it's sort of like we've got one foot in each. And meanwhile, just trying to do the ministry we do around here and not get too caught up in all the hoo-ha that's too far away. But, yep.
So, does that have to be a vote at all?
Oh, sorry. So another part of her question was whether or not there's a vote. The vote is here's how it's supposed to happen at a denominational level. If we vote to leave the denomination, either way, there should be an initial vote at consistory. If the consistory votes to not leave the denomination, nothing really comes back to the congregation. If the consistory votes to leave the denomination, then that comes back to the congregation. And according to the current rules, the congregation is supposed to approve that at least 75% in order for that to happen. We would hope that if we do make that kind of decision, that the numbers would be way higher than 75%. We don't want 25% of the people ticked off and leaving. We want 95% of the people agreeing that this is a good way to go if we do that. So. Yeah, so I just said decisions need to be made at that consistory level first. Yeah, I'm talking about the existing consistory. Not Great Consistory. Great Consistory exists. The Great Consistory is all the people who have ever served as elder and deacon, and those people can exist as in an advisory capacity. With the whole theory being that if you've served before, you've been acknowledged by your peers as a leader with some spiritual wisdom, and which is different than somebody who just became a member like yesterday, who might not have some of that shared knowledge of the. So you get not just everybody's congregational input, but the input from that Great Consistory to get better advice. That's the theory, at least. But ultimately, the current consistory needs to make that decision.
So, would that include the new deacons and elders as yes?
Yes, they would be guests, and that's where we're hoping to have it. Our current plan is to have that meeting with the Great Consistory on the 26th, and on the morning of the 27th, we're having a regular consistory meeting where then we're going to talk about, hey, what did we hear and what are we doing, and trying not to lump that on the new members, because it's unfair to them to kind of catch up to the conversation a little bit. So it is last second, because they are supposed to start July 1st. Other questions? Linda Hubble. Yes.
So occasionally I will put expenses in for women's ministry issues or like Saturday Sisters of the Tea
Discipleship. Yep, it'll come out of that one. Yeah, all the women's ministries, men's ministries, anything like that will come out of the discipleship budget. Correct.
And you communicate to people involved in choosing to spend that money, who should ever overspend.
Yes. Yep.
Yes, that he's in charge of communicating to those people. Just repeating what you said, communicating to those people what they can and cannot spend.
Yeah, Joe.
Just a tiny question. Does the senior minister have a discretionary fund?
Does the senior minister have a discretionary fund?
I have not found it yet.
Just about the only thing that's built in is that it's actually a requirement of the RCA if you're going to support a minister that you're supposed to dedicate a portion of money to their continuing ed. And so there is a portion of the personnel budget that is dedicated to continuing ed for all the staff, so not just for pastors. So there is a little bit there. I wouldn't call it discretionary fund. But then there's also money in the missions budget to help support the transportation costs. So when we went to Nepal, our personal family paid a lot of money, but the church did buy Andrea and mine plane tickets.
We baked that into the personnel budget this year.
Oh, it's baked now into the personnel budget, not the missions budget. To provide some financial support to participate in mission to the staff. Okay. We good? Because we got parties to go to. The other things I wanted to say, I had more slides. I can't even get to them. The preliminary idea for a ministry year theme, so thank you for asking about finances. If you want to know more, Chris is treasurer, and he would love to just talk to you all day about it. I just want to say something about loving people into the kingdom, because that's part of what we want to focus on in the year ahead, is what does it mean to continue to be better and better people who can share our faith in authentic ways and love people into the kingdom of God. So that's a little bit of where we're headed, and we'll talk more about that as we go. But for now, just want to celebrate being centered in Christ, all the ministry that's been done. We recently came up on 1 year with Tayo. Give it up. And then I want to give a shout out to Tricia Novak and Jonathan Lowe, because their contributions are like immeasurable, and you have no idea how much they do work behind the scenes. That's it. The Lord be with you.